alien labor.
I tell him everything that went on at Yanks.
You tell them about the vote rigging software?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
In their report, it looks like you complained about the things that had to do with FDOT specifically.
Well, that's the things that he could touch on.
Ah.
And all the other stuff he was supposed to pass on to, like the NASA stuff. He was going to pass to NASA, and, you know.
What was he going to do with the vote rigging stuff?
He was supposed to pass it out, I guess, to where it goes.
They claim that you didn't tell them.
Seems odd, doesn't it? They'd know about all the rest.
Ohio is a repeat of Florida.
Right.
And I know the Democrats enough to know that, you know, they're not going to give up if they know they've got an inch anywhere.
Who went to the Supreme Court in 2000?
That would have been Bush.
What did he go for?
To make sure that he kept what was his.
To make sure he kept what was his?
Yeah. Because we had too many whining Democrats at the time.
Too much whining.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't, in the Supreme Court, did they it was the case no whining for Democrats, or was it something specific that they wanted?
Yeah, they wanted to steal an election.
Bush Cheney wanted to steal the election?
No. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Don't. Woo. You got the names on the wrong side there.
Where are you from, Liz?
Boca Raton, Florida.
Florida? Did they go to the Supreme Court in 2000 and ask them to not count votes in Florida? It's a yes or no answer. Did they?
I don't know.
Okay, the answer is yes, they did. And do you know what the Supreme Court said?
I know what the Supreme Court
What'd
said.
they say? Vote Bush! That is what they said. And they said don't count the votes.
In the year 2000, the country failed abysmally in the presidential election process. There's no doubt in my mind that Al Gore was elected president. He received the most votes nationwide, and in my opinion, he also received the most votes in Florida.
As long as we cannot express ourselves through the ballot box, I mean, with Albert Gore getting so many more popular votes than Bush in 2000. Well, in a normal country, that would be the election. And we should arrange our elections, really the winner wins, that's all, not go back to an 18th century trick.
What is your name?
My name's Brad.
Brad, I'm sorry, but I didn't get it to begin with. Let me give you a surprise.
Okay.
In 2000,
Yeah.
I voted for Al Gore.
Yeah.
We're up against 21st century high-tech Jim Crow. As they realized that, you know, the first time around, they beat people down, they lynched people until they could do that no more, and the people demanded they stop it. Now they've realized that if they go in and hide behind a clipboard and a suit and a technician in a private corporation, that they can go back to disenfranchising poor and minorities.
There was a recent commission that was put together headed by James A. Baker and Jimmy Carter. This commission came out and recommended photo IDs at the polls, requiring folks to have photo ID. Now, it sounds sensible enough until you take a look at it and you discover that anywhere from 10 to 20 million American voters don't have a driver's license, don't have photo IDs. And what do you know? They happen to be largely minorities, city dwellers, the elderly, the poor. Look, voter fraud is not a problem in this country. Election fraud is a huge problem. Voter fraud, you know, is something that the bad guys like to put out there as if it's a problem. In fact, for example, the League of Women's Voters did a study of the last two national elections in Ohio and found that of over 9 million votes cast, there was exactly 4 cases of voter fraud that was discovered. It's not the people. It's the voting machine companies who are running these elections with secret software, who are privatizing it. It's the congressmen and the senators and the state officials who are allowing them to do so.
There's nothing quite so hot as a Georgia summer. But guess what? The Diebold machines break down in the heat. Now, I wonder if our illustrious Secretary of State, Kathy Cox, who wants to be the next governor of Georgia, first woman governor of Georgia, asked the question, how do the machines perform in the heat? If she had just asked that simple question, we would have had an alternative to the Diebold machines. But then by that time, of course, she had already allowed Diebold to place her photograph and the seal of the state of Georgia on their promotional materials. So she had become wedded to this particular system, which I think kind of is a conflict of interest.
I'll say elections were stolen. In fact,
You
I
will?
think I did.
You think the election was stolen?
Absolutely.
In 2004?
Look at the exit polls, and they don't match the results. The same thing that we complained about when the Ukraine had their election,
Right.
and actually made them have a new one.
Right.
Their exit polls were actually closer than
Right.
ours.
In fact, in the states that had electronic voting, the numbers didn't match at all with the exit polling. But in states where they had paper, what do you know? The exit polls and the final results were almost perfect.
I have no doubt John Kerry won the election in Ohio.
Okay. Now, had John Kerry won the election in Ohio, John Kerry would be the president.
Sure. To say that those exit polls were so far off just didn't happen. Something else happened. And I say that as someone who has a PhD in political science and has worked in campaigns. People who came out and thought they voted for Kerry, their votes weren't counted,
Right.
or somebody actually tampered with the vote count.
So the Yang folks,
Right.
Feeney and the are sort of harassing Mavis?
Are getting DOT to harass Mavis, because Nelson Hill, who works for DOT,
Yeah.
is also Feeney's puppy. When
Yeah.
they were harassing her, I wrote back to the head IG, Cecil Bragg, and said, you're not doing anything on the investigation, you know, why not? And the next business day, their response was they fired me and Mavis at the same time.
Clint is fired at 10 in the morning. I'm fired at like 2:30 that afternoon.
Instead of investigating this company, instead of putting the brakes on what's going on, they're actually writing letters of recommendation for that company,
Correct.
Yang,
Correct.
and saying that you're removed.
Correct.
Tom Feeney's fingerprints are all over this thing?
Yes. Yes.
Literal fingerprints.
Literal fingerprints. I mean, read the public record. Read the public record. I don't want anyone to take my word for anything, Brad. Get the documents and read the record. And when you read a memo from Nelson Hill's secretary to him stating that Mr. Feeney wants this letter signed today, and this letter is a recommendation for Yang Enterprises, and the following day, after Mr. Hill executes this letter of recommendation, he is suddenly promoted to Deputy CIO for the State Technology Office.
Nelson Hill is promoted the
Yes.
day after he writes this letter.
The letter of recommendation for Yang Enterprises.
Had they had any problems with you prior to this investigation?
I believe in January of 2001, I received an outstanding evaluation that went into a lot of detail as to the value of my services to the department.
And how long had you been with the department?
I began with the department in '88.
88?
Yes.
So
I'd been with the department for...
Almost 15 years
Yes.
at this point.
Yes. The department did an agency cleansing of any corporate knowledge concerning the problems with the Yang contract.
How many people were fired?
A half dozen other than Clint and myself.
So anybody who was involved with the Yang contract is now
Correct.
gone?
Correct.
In fact, on her, they tried to get her to sign a little paper saying she resigned.
Did she sign it?
She signed the resign one, and she kept to the one where it said you're fired. So when it went to court, when they said, well, she resigned voluntarily, we didn't do anything about it, she could produce a paper showing that they're just flat out lying.
She filed a whistleblower suit.
Yes.
And she won the case.
She won the case.
What I began to do was to look into all the pieces of Clint Curtis's story, all the claims that he's made, and the more you look, the more paper trail there is that backs up Clint Curtis's assertions.
In 2004, the Florida Department of Transportation's audit of Yang Enterprises found $850,000 in questioned and qualified costs. Of that amount, Yang was asked to repay $132,000 pending further investigation.
Hello, Phoenix. We've got a huge show for you today. Diebold whistleblower Stephen Heller, in his first live broadcast interview.
Stephen Heller was charged